was very influenced by Person of Interest and very influenced by our conversation, in that I did want one of the AIs in my movie, Big Semi, to be like a relative of the machine that is in Person of Interest.
A movie is an intricate emotion generation machine. We offer our audiences a perfectly crafted experience.
Is this a test screening?
This is how we make our films.
What do you mean?
Welcome to the MCSFO podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Ray, and joining me today is a very, very special guest. She is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, co-winner of the Best Emerging Artist Award by Ava DuVernay, and at the AT&T Film Awards, and she's the Audience Choice winner for Best Live Action Sci-Fi Short at the 2017 Atlanta Sci-Fi Film Festival for her sci-fi short, Real Artist. Welcome everyone, Cameo Wood.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so glad that I have you on finally. It took a little bit. We had some, technical difficulties with Zoom for some reason today, but I'm so glad we finally got past all of that. So, Real Artist. When I first saw this film, your sci-fi short was obviously submitted to our film festival. And when I first saw it, I was completely blown away. And I love, high concept intellectual sci-fi films. And then I watched it again last night and I was blown away again. And it was funny because now, seeing it a second time, I'm like, wait a minute. So Big Semi and Rehoboam from Westworld are like brothers.
Oh yeah, totally.
Obviously, when we saw this, even let me see, that was 2017. We still didn't know enough about what was going on with Westworld yet, because Westworld came out in 2016.
Right.
And by the time this happened, we hadn't gotten that far in the narrative to know what was really happening yet. So I don't want to give too much spoilers of Real Artists, because Real Artists is available to watch on like iTunes and available for streaming. But we have it on the Atlanta Sci-Fi Film Festival's YouTube page, but just a trailer. So we can do part spoiler and part unspoiler. I don't want to give too much away. But I felt like that was still like, there are some people who may not have watched Westworld yet and don't know what Rehoboam is. But I just thought that was very interesting for me. And there was some people obviously from the festival and just in general who have seen it. That was how did you feel when you found out, or when you saw, because you watched Westworld, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
What did you think when you saw that?
Well, it's funny. So a while ago, there was a show called Person of Interest that was made by Jonathan Noland, and it sort of explores a lot of the same concepts that Westworld does, in that it explores privacy and semi-omniscient artificial intelligence, and how that might be a technology that could be utilized to to direct and control human behavior and predict human behavior. And so I was actually incredibly influenced by Person of Interest. And so I actually talked to Jonah at Sundance a while ago. He was there for Interstellar. And I hated Interstellar.
Yeah, I did.
But I was like this massive, Person of Interest fan, and Westworld hadn't come out yet. And I said to him, later, I was saying, Westworld, that Person of Interest is so interesting and critical in that, the main character, I'm going to talk about Person of Interest because it's such an old show that like can't be spoiled. But it's also similar in that, Person of Interest had two AIs battling for the future of like humanity and privacy and information and free will. And what Jenna and I had talked about was, that people were invested in these two AIs and protecting them as if they were gods and as if they were acolytes or priests of, these two gods, these two living artificially intelligent gods. And one of the things that he and I talked about was, what happens if there's a pantheon of gods, almost like the Greek gods. And they had arguments and disagreements and romances, and the acolytes and their, disciples had to figure out like how to navigate, like, oh, like, Zeus and Hera are like having a great romance. Now we're friends. Oh shit. Now like Hera's cheating. So now are the acolytes in the outs? Like what's happening right now? So sort of taking that idea. And so when Westworld is sort of, going into this territory, I was not surprised. In that, all these characters in Westworld are as gods, and that they can't die, that they have so many, iterations to a certain extent. So it's fairly fascinating in how they have, sort of transcended their original thing. So anyway, with regard to Real Artists, I was very influenced by Person of Interest and very influenced by our conversation, in that I did want one of the AIs in my movie, Big Semi, to be like a relative of the machine that is in Person of Interest. And I love this idea of like one of the things that Tamlin and I talked about for her character, because we wanted to make sure, so Tamlin's character in Real Artists plays sort of like a creative director of an animation studio. And she has to make decisions that could be considered to be unethical or immoral. And we wanted to make sure she wasn't the typical Chinese dragon lady, that she wasn't just some, just, blanket bad lady. And so one of the things that we talked about was this idea that if you believe an AI really could develop films better than people, and it was demonstrably true that like, people made these movies and they, were received at a certain level. AI made this movie and it was received at this level. You would then conclude AIs make better films. So if you believe that's to be true, and Tamlin's character does wholeheartedly, then you might be willing to do a lot of things to make sure, money, but also just making the best possible film. Like if you believe that's the way, then you're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen, as opposed to saying, I'm much more about humanity and I want mediocre films. So anyway, that was sort of these discussions that she and I had about, what her character's beliefs were and why she was willing to do things that could be construed as unethical or cruel, and why she was doing them. And she did them because art matters more than anything else. And she believes in real artists.
That's interesting. I can now see that being more of a motive other than just money, because cinema influences us a great deal, way more than people are aware of. I've always understood that and known the power of cinema, very similar to the power of music or just the power of art in general. But movie and storytelling is an incredibly powerful tool to use to convince people of things, to teach people things. It gets in our heads in ways that most people really don't pay attention to at all. So I can totally see them wanting to invest in something like that, and not really look at the people, like the artists who they're using for this. They're kind of probably looking at them like as a sacrifice, for the good of, what they're trying to do. It would have been an interesting twist though, if they had presented it to her in that manner in the interview. Like we're trying to say, like, even for right now, like in my opinion, like, when we're creating sci-fi films in particular, that's depicting our future, we have way too many unfavorable, negative perspectives and perceptions of our future. And one of my goals with the film festival and just with the organization is trying to inspire filmmakers to create films that challenges our perception of the future. But it's not popular, because it also starts to question utopia and what that all means and that kind of thing. So it's really difficult to kind of see how that could be done. But it would have been interesting if they kind of did like, hey, we need to save humanity and save our perception of how we see things by, us creating a film that's going to inspire people to do certain things. And then she might feel more obligated, because in spoiler for everybody who's watching this, if you haven't seen The Artist, please stop this video now and go watch it, go stream it, and then come back and watch the rest of this video. But so the main protagonist, I found it interesting how the algorithm or the whole AI also gets to know her responses, and they keep having her going back and forth through the interview several times to get to know her, to get her to say yes to this whole thing. But I would have just been like, okay, we have to save humanity. People are creating negative experiences, just like in the films. We got to create different films that's going to inspire people. We need your help to save us,
I think, if Big Semi had asked Tamlin's character, Paladin, to just tell the truth initially, I think it would be less likely that that Sophia would, appreciate that. I think that, Sophia is probably about 22, 23. She's a recent student, and I think she's really idealistic. And I think, she has this idea of what films are and how they're made, and that they're made by people, not by people just, watching something that an AI has made. I think, it's possible maybe it had already asked her in an earlier iteration. I don't know. I mean, I think, and I've thought about this a lot, I think it's a really hard sell to say to somebody, I just need you to basically not remember 8 to 10 hours of your day every day. And, you have to do it because this is how the best films are made. And that is ultimately the argument they do make in the film. But I think it's definitely, I try to do it in a show, don't tell, in that, hey, do you like these films? This is how we make them. Guess what your role is? It's watching them. Right, but you agree these are the best films, so therefore it follows that in order for you to make the best films, you just need to watch them, not make them.
That totally does make sense. It was just something that I didn't even have that in my head before, but once you started explaining it, I was just like, oh yeah, duh. That would have been an interesting scenario to see. But even when she first, I think, notices what was really happening, she started crying. Her eyes were very watery at several parts. Was that planned? I mean, because like, I think at one point her eyes got really, really watery when everything set in, you see the look on her face completely change. She's like, wait a minute. And she's a smart cookie, because that I know young kids now, when they get an opportunity to work for a big company like that, they'll go right along with it. Even in the back of their mind, they may think something is a little off, but they'll be like, oh, the chance of a lifetime. Oh, I need money. I need to work right away. I just graduated. And they would not they wouldn't change their mind or make that decision like she did initially. But you see those tears in her. She's beautiful eyes, but you see those tears. How did you direct her for that part? Like, what were you trying to convey with that?
So that was actually the very first scene that we shot in the whole movie. And we had talked about it beforehand, so we didn't block anything really, except like on set. So on the day, I had just told her, like, we sort of like, when I direct, I usually just walk through emotions, and I just sort of said, this is your dream job, this is your hero, and it's finally happening for you. And you've just been told that you're going to basically watch a movie, a 2-hour movie 4 times a day, and then have it erased from your memory. And that's literally going to be your job. And you won't remember any movie that you've seen. You'll watch it every time with a fresh perspective. And you only have to watch it and have, your unique emotions and ideas of what's on screen and how it makes you feel. That's the only thing that we want to read. That's the only thing that matters. And you are basically we're going to read how you're watching it. And that's your dream job now. And it has to, I mean, and in the story, like in the script, this is supposed to be the moment of like, despair, where she's now lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Where this is something that she was able to, deal with a whole lot of things, and she's willing to work with an AI. She's willing to do a whole bunch of things. But this is something, there's a Rubicon here that she has to decide, is this okay? And her heart is broken. And she isn't entirely willing to give up, but there's a moment later on that, for me at least, is an echo, which is when she sees the statue of John Henry and hears a story about how he beat the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of looks to him. And one of the things that we talked about was looking to John Henry as a collaborator, as like, did he win? And when Tamlin says, he won that one, she's like, mm-hmm. Yeah, we stuck it to the man, we beat the machine. And like, but he died afterwards. She's like, I'd be willing to take this shit down. I'd be willing to sacrifice and, die for this. So yeah, I mean, I think that her heart is broken, and now she's trying to figure out like a way out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the moment where she decides that she can't do it. That moment when she's crying is when her heart has been broken and she can't go forward with the idea.
Right. Wow. And like I said, I mean, if somebody did, I know plenty of young people right now that would have signed the NDA, and she didn't even look it over. She didn't read it. Clearly she was also signing something that she was not leaving. Like, she just goes back and she goes through this loop of mm-hmm. her with this interview. And I'm like, wow, this girl really, got sucked in pretty hard to that. So I love the story. And then it's funny how like I didn't remember or make the connection between the artist and Westworld until I watched it again. And I was just like, because Rehoboam is just in this season, in season 3. Mm-hmm. So it's just happening mm-hmm. right now. But and I've never watched Person of Interest actually. I think I've seen a trailer for it, but I didn't really know what it was about or anything. And it's only now that, because everyone's cross-referencing the two shows, that now I'm like, okay, now I guess I got to go and watch this a little bit.
Oh, that's rough.
I also think that this is perfect timing for the artist, even though you wrote it, this was filmed, I guess, or finished back in 2017. It's perfect timing for, this climate is perfect for this, because you also have devs, which is very popular, with dealing with the same concepts and everything. So, I mean, how was that for you to know that you made something so long ago and it was based off of this, but you had no clue where Westworld was going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled. I mean, I feel like, yeah, devs, definitely is another kind of machine that can, precisely model human nature to a very finite point. And it's fascinating. And, even now there's even AIs like, I think Warner Brothers was using it. There's a whole bunch of these AIs that can process scripts mm-hmm. in order to determine if it's worth a read. How much the budget is, if it's worth passing along. So there's now these automatic AI script readers. I was at Cannes a couple of years ago. There was a company that was advertising this service where they'll take your movie and show it to somebody who's in an MRI machine, and they'll determine, what someone's looking at when they're bored, when they're excited, and then they give you that feedback. There was around the time that I was releasing Real Artists, mm-hmm. even a thing where they were having people wear these kind of smartwatches for what's the movie with the bear and Leonardo DiCaprio? That one.
Yeah.
That one. So during that movie, they had people wear these things, and they wanted to see like when people were bored, when they were still, when their pulse was racing, when everyone jumped because something was scary, because they wanted to know how to edit it. So these things are already happening. So a lot of the things in Real Artists regarding using AI to determine plot, editing, casting, I think that we're seeing a lot of, like when we, when we had major actors be part of the Me Too scandal, this idea of like, well, pop them out, put somebody else's face on it and call it a day. I think that we're going to be seeing more and more of that, of like, recasting with an AI who's modeling and doing mocap or something. I mean, I think that, I think that Real Artists thankfully is a little prescient of the future. But you know, it's funny, when I was touring with it, every now and then, you know, the ending is fast. The ending is like the twist in the ending, you know, blink and you'll miss it, kind of.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would be in things where people would just say, so she was a time traveler? I'm like,
oh, wow. They went there.
yeah, it's like, no, she wasn't, you know? Yeah, so, you know, it's, yeah,
so
it's definitely.
Do you think you kind of wish you had that, you know, system in place that would have helped with the making of this film?
You know, I mean, you know, I think I'm pretty proud of how it came out, and I wouldn't really, there's like, you know, maybe 1 second that I'd really love to change, but overall I'm pretty proud of it. And I do like that I yeah, I believe in my audience, and I believe that they're smart, and I don't spoon feed them. And you know, I had decided early on that the greatest compliment I could ever get from real artists is someone watching it more than once.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm mission accomplished. People watch it more than once. My editor actually just saw it again after whatever, like 3 years. He's like, so the movie we made, it's actually still pretty good. I just saw it again. It's actually great.
It's timeless. I mean, it really is. And what's so funny is, like I said, you made this in 2017, but it still is extremely relevant now more than ever, you know, because of all these other shows that are dealing with similar concepts.